Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Time for your DC Spotlight for the week of May 31st, 2021. Can't believe it's almost June. 6 months of the year. Year's half over. Been flying by. I know there's a ton of stuff I plan on doing this year that I haven't done. Every year I say I'm going to work on my best of 20, best of whatever year as I'm reading the books. I'm going to make little notes next to them and say, I got to remember this moment or whatever. Yeah, haven't done it. I
Yeah,
haven't done it, but hope springs eternal. Maybe next week, maybe this week. Who knows if I'll find some time. But that being said, it is a little bit of a smaller week. It is a fifth Tuesday for DC, and usually when you have that fifth release, it's a lighter schedule, which is great. Because man, sometimes we're on here for 3 hours talking to you guys about these books. And they also oftentimes use it to release annuals, and this week is no different. We have a couple of annuals. We have the end of Shadow War Omega. We have the end of the first arc of Hardware, which feels like it's gone on forever. Now, Nice House on the Lake returns. We get a reprint of the first couple issues of Batman Beyond the White Knight. We get a preview, I guess, in a way, of Dark Crisis with Road to Dark Crisis. So yeah, there's a few books to talk about. What do you think about the week overall, Rocky?
I'm just. It's okay. I actually, as an annual week, I liked it. I actually I really enjoyed Action Comics Annual. I really was quite impressed with it. Even the Batman Annual with Ghostmaker in it and Clown Hunter, I thought it was actually pretty good. We introduced some new characters. I'm so happy that we got another chapter of Nice House on the Lake. That story is really taking shape. And the road to Dark Crisis, it's inching closer, and a nice sort of end cap to Shadow War with Shadow War Omega. So overall, it's a short week, but I think overall a good week. I was generally pleased with it.
Yeah, I agree. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Justice League Road to Dark Crisis #1. So this is an anthology. There's a few stories in here. We have Team Up, which is actually a team up between John Kent and Nightwing, which, not the first time we've seen this, but the first time they've teamed up since their respective father figures have been killed. So written by Joshua Williamson, Dan Jurgens handles the pencils, Norm Ratman on inks, Hi-Fi on colors. Then Life of Purpose, written by Jeremy Adams, Rosie Campe on art, Matt Herms does the colors. Survivors from writer Chuck Brown, Fico Asio on art, Sebastian Cheng handles the colors on that one. The Pariah from Philip Kennedy Johnson on the script, Leila Del Duca on art, Jordy Blair on colors. Because the Night from Stephanie Phillips, Clayton Henry on art, Marcelo Mayala on colors, and then Josh Reed handles the letters for all of them. So yeah, I mean, this was kind of a mixed bag for me. I didn't really feel. I mean, it says Road to Dark Crisis, but I didn't really feel like it's offering any like hints or clues about what Dark Crisis is really going to be. I did appreciate the perspective of Nightwing and John Kent in that first story, and it's kind of that one more so than any, I guess, is a prelude because it's Dick Grayson and John Kent talking about their fathers being gone, and also being very meta and talking about the fact that Dick Grayson's he's like, I'm not going to get too worried. They always come back, right? So very meta in terms of no comic book characters actually stay dead anymore. At least doesn't seem like it. It also seems like John Kent's got a newer costume. I don't. That costume looks a little different than any he's worn before. So I thought that story was okay. The second one with Wally, Iris West talking about Barry being missing, it leans more into that, which I guess it's been a while since we've heard any talk of Barry. Everything's been about the death of the Justice League lately, but we do know in the Infinite Frontier, no, in the Justice League Incarnate mini that we covered not too long ago, that Barry had gone to a different reality as well, and when the Justice League Incarnate went there to try to save them, he didn't even recognize them. So kind of leaning into that and leaning into the idea that Wally West is very much embodies the hope of the DC universe, as well as he's multiversal. He can travel between multiverses, so obviously he's going to be a big part of the Crisis. And then Hal Jordan is in the third story, teaming up with Jackson Hyde. Hal being off Earth for a long time. It's weird to me that they killed John Stewart, not Hal Jordan. Like, John Stewart has almost in recent years taken over as the primary Green Lantern, which I personally don't care for because I just like Hal better. I know there's a lot of people that, for them, John Stewart is the Green Lantern because they discovered DC heroes through the Justice League Unlimited cartoon. So I don't begrudge those people. It's fine. I expect Hal to play a big role. He's kind of like the senior statesman, the hero with the most experience of the ones that are left. So we'll see what kind of role he plays. The Pariah story, I wanted to like it more because I really, really like Pariah as a character and a concept, but I thought the art was only okay. And I don't know. The thing with Pariah as a character, he's really challenging. Because if you're not careful, he can come across as just like this whiny, annoying character. Because I remember when Crisis first came out, the original Crisis, people were complaining about that, which I found to be ironic. They were whining about this guy that whined. But it is a danger with the character. So, yeah, he's a character that I really enjoy, but I didn't necessarily like that story that much. But I thought the final one from Stephanie Phillips, I thought it was fantastic. I'm a big fan of Nocturna, and I think that she doesn't get enough use, or she doesn't get used in necessarily in the right way. I think she has a lot more potential. So I really enjoyed that final story. So anyway, what do you think of these four, Rocky? Any of them stand out for you? What were your thoughts?
Well, frankly, none of them really stood out for me, none of them were really necessary at all, as far as I was concerned. But I'll start at the beginning. The first one dealing with Nightwing and John Kent. Basically, this is just a glorified conversation between the two that's completely unnecessary. We know that they have to step up to the plate because we know that Justice League is dead. There's some, I guess, kudos for trying to establish the fact that, I mean, Nightwing shows some insecurity or not insecurity. Nightwing shows that he's in denial. He refuses to believe that Batman's dead because you almost can't blame him, because how many times does Batman have to be dead and Justice League have to be dead? It's almost like Nightwing is he's like us, the readers. It's like where there's a part of us that's always cynical when we hear that a big league team like the Justice League is dead, because we always, it's like Superman said at the funeral of Martian Manhunter all those years ago, goes, we simply pray for a resurrection, and the resurrection always comes. And so that's what's happening. And so the conversation between John Kent and Nightwing, it's good because it establishes, I suppose, the rapport that we're expecting. But we've gotten this in previous issues already. We've already kind of seen it, and we know that these are people. That John Kent looks up to Nightwing, and it works well. But it's not absolutely necessary to read. It's fine, but it's not necessary. It's the best drawn. It's got the best art out of all of them. And so I didn't mind it. They reminisce about when Superman died and they talk about the past, but it's really not necessary. For me, I'm more interested in the Dark Crisis. This is, while on the surface this looks like character work, it's not character work that drives the plot in my mind, and not enough to really satisfy me. The next story, dealing with Flash and Wally West and Iris Allen, talking about Barry Allen. That this was by far the worst art. I really didn't like the art. I thought this was phoned in, the art. I didn't like it. It was a complete waste of time. It didn't really elevate. Didn't give us any clues about. It didn't move the story forward. It almost arguably made me less excited about Dark Crisis. Knowing that Wally West. We already know that Wally West at the end of Jeremy Adams' last Flash story. It was exciting because him and Wally West and Wallace West are off to look for Barry. And now we have this side story with him taking on Giganta in frankly a ridiculous story. I mean, this actually interrupts it, and it doesn't serve either character, and it doesn't move the narrative forward. This is a cash grab, plain and simple. And now I enjoyed more the Green Lantern, the Hal Jordan and Jackson Hyde story, because because we actually get some reaction from Hal Jordan. This is something that is actually new. This is the first time we're seeing Hal Jordan's reaction. Hal Jordan finds out for the first time from Jackson Hyde, of all people, that the Justice League is dead, because there's this like marine life sort of alien life form that's crashing into the Earth's ocean, and Hal Jordan wants the Justice League's help, but of course they're not around. Jackson Hyde helps him sort of befriend this alien and alleviate the threat. But and in the process of that, he has a conversation with Jackson Hyde where, despite being told that the Justice League is dead, he's got to put his feelings aside and get the job done with Jackson Hyde. And then it basically ends with him just saying, "Okay, I'm going to go off and I'm going to get to the bottom of this." Again, is it absolutely necessary that we know that we're privy to this? No, Hal Jordan can find out about the Justice League in Dark Crisis #1. But again, at least it's something. The Pariah story, I think, adds one element here that I think is interesting and moves the plot forward for Dark Crisis, because it gives us motivation for Pariah that we've not seen before, and that is, this suggests, more so than what we've already suspected, that Pariah is a victim of being taken over and manipulated by the darkness, by the great darkness. Because for me anyway, and maybe you feel differently, Jace, but I feel I was always unsure, it was Pariah just insane, or was he corrupted by the great darkness, or was he manipulating the great darkness, or which was it? Was a combination of both. It would appear as if that Pariah, in his, because he lost the world in the original Crisis, and he was doomed to bear witness to the destruction of the multiverse. The guilt that he suffers over that, the great darkness, it appears here was fermenting the hallucination in his mind, perverting him to try to. And I believe the great darkness is now utilizing Pariah as its agent, as its head agent to create the great dark army. And I think that's what I got out of that. So I felt I got something out of that story. Nocturna, the Stephanie Phillips story, it's interesting. Just for those who are fans of Nocturna in the Suicide Squad, I'm pretty certain this is a different Nocturna. The Nocturna in Suicide Squad that is currently, probably still making out with Connor Kent, or pardon me, Match, not Connor Kent, but Match. That's a Nocturna from another Earth. So I think this is the Nocturna from actually our Earth, Designate Zero. I actually liked it because I don't believe this is the same Nocturna that was in Suicide Squad, but it suggests that she's on our side, but this Nocturna, while she's going to be a member of the Secret Society of Secret Villains with Deathstroke, she's likely going to end up betraying them and probably end up being on the side of good, because we know that Deathstroke, now that he's been resurrected, we're going to be getting to that in Shadow War Omega. We know that with Deathstroke, spoiler alert, surprise, surprise, Deathstroke is back. That was in solicits, but Nocturna's likely going to play a role in perhaps betraying the Secret Society, and is planting the seeds of that ultimate betrayal, which will play a role in the Dark Crisis, because we know that Deathstroke maybe goes a little bit crazy upon his resurrection, which we're going to get to when we review Shadow War Omega. So all in all, I didn't think this was necessary, but like anything, because you and I are both avid DC readers, it's nice to know this information, but it's not absolutely essential. And if you're budgeting your money, you can skip this. Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'm curious, what makes you think it's a different Nocturna? Why can't it be the same one that we saw in the Suicide Squad?
I guess I guess it could. It could be. I guess it just seemed to me to be odd that if it's the same Nocturna, then where's Match? Why wouldn't he be around? Because he's but no, you could be right. I just
didn't know if there was something I missed. Yeah, very well could be different.
Yeah,
or not. Who knows? That's the problem with DC continuity these days.
Yeah,
everything matters, everything counts, but leaves us a little confused sometimes. So,
yeah.
All right. Up next, Hardware Season 1, number 6. This is the final issue of the first arc. For some reason, we don't have a credits page, but we do know that Brandon Thomas is the writer. Dennis Cowan does the pencils, Bill Sienkiewicz on inks, Chris Sotomayor on colors. Sorry, I don't know who the letterer is. But this is, this is the end of the first arc. It felt pretty satisfying. What'd you think, Rock?
Sorry, I'm just a little bit behind you here. Yep. I was, it's funny. I first just talking in terms of artistically. I can't. Forgive me, as you mentioned, I guess it's Cowan on the art. I feel that the art got a little bit sloppier this final issue in parts. So I was a little bit disappointed in that. It feels rushed in parts, but having said that, though, there's enough there that this is action packed. I mean, I will say this definitely feels action packed, but artistically, it did feel a little bit rushed to me. And some of the pages, I think, look, because he's fighting. I guess he's fighting the character. I call him. I guess I can't remember the character's name, but he's like multiple man. He duplicates himself, and um, and some of the pages I thought maybe looked a little bit that they could have been a little bit. The line work could have been a little bit more fine. It seemed a little bit sloppy, but this was a significantly issue long action sequence, and it's really good action between Hardware and this multiple man or whatever his name is, and this sort of ends this. There is a resolution of the story arc, so this does after this is the sixth issue, and so we got a good ending to season one, and I it wraps up. I would say maybe a little conveniently, but there's still maybe a little bit too conveniently. But frankly, I'm kind of glad we got a resolution there because I think that's what this series needs, and this still remains firmly in third place for me. I still put Icon and Rocket, my favorite milestone title, followed by well, actually, I would put Duo there now, followed by Static, and Hardware here, and then there's another one that I'm forgetting. There's that group one. Um,
Blood Syndicate.
Thank you, Crime Syndicate. That's
Blood Syndicate.
Blood Syndicate. Thank you. Yeah. So I would actually say Hardware's actually my least favorite, but that's not an insult. It's just not as just quite not as compelling here. There's something that this series has been missing in my mind that it hasn't quite gelled for me. And maybe it seems maybe it's because it just seems a little bit maybe tropey or cliche a little bit or but um I don't know. I'm having a hard time. It just seems, with the bad corporate white guy and his the relationship, the corporate machinations. It seems a little bit off. Guy's ripped off. He works for this corporation. He's betrayed by his partner, and then he's sort of scapegoated, and then he comes back in a suit of armor and wins the day. Seems a little bit tropey to me, and I didn't really find that it had too many. I wasn't caught off guard. There wasn't any. It didn't subvert any of my expectations in a way. It was kind of predictable, and I would have liked a little bit more unpredictability there. But overall, it served its purpose, and there was some good character work. I will say that there's really good character work, and I like the relationship between the characters. So, what do you think?
Yeah, actually, I think that's one of the weak spots for me. There is some good character work for it feels like everybody but Curtis Metcalf. I feel like he's the main character, Hardware, and I feel like we got less character work of him than anybody. Like I still feel like I don't know who Curtis Metcalf is. This very much reads like an origin story, sets up all the pieces. It pays homage to what came before in Hardware the first time around,
Yeah.
but it feels a little paint by the numbers, like you said, a little tropey, but it's not terrible, but it's not breaking any new ground. Now, what I'm hoping is that Brandon Thomas is like, okay, we need to establish who all the characters are. Who are the players? What's the setting? What's the background between Hardware and Alva and whatnot? Curtis Metcalf and Alva and Asher Sims and whatnot. So that going forward, then if he wants to flip everything on its head and really veer away from what happened in the first go round of Hardware, he can do that. But it very much felt like this was kind of doing your homework, so to speak, or eating your vegetables. Let's get the basics down.
Uh,
It's not a bad comic, but it doesn't break any ground. And the other nitpick I have about it, and I've said this throughout, it feels like there's so much story that Brandon Thomas is trying to squeeze in here. And we know from experience, Brandon has come on the show and said as much, that oftentimes the hardest challenge for him is getting his story to fit in the pages that are allotted,
Mhm.
right? Because he usually has so much more that he wants to say, and we see that, like, especially when Curtis Metcalf on Hardware defeats the guy that can multiply himself. His name is Reprise,
Reprise.
which,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah, it's mentioned like I think one time in the two issues he's in, and if you blink, you'll miss it. But once he defeats him, and then a couple of Curtis Metcalf's allies show up, and his armor, the hardware armor, is completely deleted of power of energy, and he's struggling to even walk in it. And they tell him, hey, you defeated the guy. It's okay. You can stand down. And Metcalf's like, no, I've got to go. I've got to go get Alva. And they're like, no, just stop. Listen to what we're trying to say to you. He says, no, I'm going to go get Alva. And so he says no to them. That's the scene that we get on the final panel of one page. And then on the next page, he's in Alva's office. We see some security and whatnot, like knocked out in the elevator behind him. We see some blood. He's holding some sort of weapon. I don't know where he got it from. And Alva's just there with a gun. It's like, you feel like there's a page or two missing. It's like, again, the pacing, it's very choppy at times. And it pulls me out of the story. I'm like, wait, what did I miss here? He's walking into the building, or he's in the lobby. He's walking toward the elevators, and they're telling him to stop, and he's saying no. And then next thing we know, he's in the office. We don't see the fight on the elevator. We don't know where he gets that weapon. Again, I understand the need for it, in terms of there just wasn't enough room to put everything in that Brandon Thomas wanted to, but man, it still feels a little bit choppy, and I gotta call it out. So,
Yeah, I do. I would just add that I do think there's strong female characters in this narrative. Like,
oh yeah,
I thought that
100%.
as a compliment, I do. He does some better. There's some stronger female characters, and they have a lot of agency in the storyline, and I thought that worked quite well. And as a compliment, as a supporting cast.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the nitpicks I had, going back to talk about Blood Syndicate, written by Jeffrey Thorne, who is African American, Brandon Thomas African American as well. But I mentioned it when we talked about Blood Syndicate, about how much slang there was in that book, and how it felt a little cliched. And I also talked about how the problem with using a bunch of slang is that it dates the book. It sets it in a certain period of time. It's like if you go back and read like the early Ghost Rider books that Gary Friedrich wrote, it's all like groovy and far out and whatever. It doesn't read very well. Brandon Thomas doesn't fall into that trap here. So yeah, there are very strong female characters, very strong persons of color, and he doesn't fall into that trap of like jive talk or what have you. So I appreciate that as well. So I'm very hopeful for the future of this title. I feel like now that we've gotten the basics out of the way, Brandon Thomas is going to be able to he's not going to be beholden to the past. Not that he necessarily was, but you do have to kind of, do your due diligence and kind of establish who the characters are and whatnot. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential going forward. I do agree with Rocky. It's at this point, it's the least compelling of the Milestone books, and for that reason, it's also my least favorite. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Or maybe I'll put it right there with Blood Syndicate. Icon of Rocket, definitely number 1. Static, number 2. Duo, probably 3, because we've only had one issue. And then Blood Syndicate, Hardware kind of bringing up the rear, but definite room for improvement. And that's not to say, like Rocky said, that's not to say they're bad. I'm just enjoying the others more right now. So, okay, up next we have Batman number 2022 annual number 1, under new management, written by Ed Brisson, art by John Timms, colors by Rex Locus, lettered by Clayton Cowles. This is 100% a Ghostmaker story, or a Batman Incorporated story, if you want to put it that way. Ghostmaker, it's actually a pretty funny scene. Batman basically summons the members of Batman Incorporated, those that are left, to come to Ghostmaker's ship, and then he tells them, "Hey, I'm turning over the day-to-day operations of Batman Incorporated to Ghostmaker." Now, unbeknownst to Batman, Ghostmaker had confronted these other Batman before, and the reason he did that is because Batman had offered to Ghostmaker previously, "Hey, I want you to head up Batman Incorporated." Ghostmaker wasn't interested, and the reason Batman wants to do that is he tells Ghostmaker, "Hey, you've done a great job cleaning up crime, right? Like you do what you say you're going to do. You go into a city, you clean things up, You get rid of all the corruption, crime goes down, and it's a safer place. But then you leave and you move on. And Ghostmaker says, yeah, I'm giving him a clean slate, another chance to, to make better decisions. Batman says, no, what you're actually doing is you're creating a power vacuum. Other criminal enterprises come in, other corrupt politicians. Sometimes it ends up just as bad, if not worse, than before. And Ghostmaker's like, well, he doesn't want to take responsibility for that. He's like, that's not my fault that they can't maintain the status quo. And Batman's like, it's a fundamental flaw in what you're doing. What you're doing is incomplete. And what you need is an organization like Batman Incorporated, where you leave somebody behind that maybe doesn't have quite the ability or strength to clean things up, but they could keep bad elements from coming in and establishing and becoming powerful. And so that's what Batman has wanted Ghostmaker to do for a long time. Ghostmaker's always refused. For whatever reason, now he's thinking that, yeah, he's willing to do it. He's willing to run Batman Incorporated. But in between this time, in between this offer and him accepting it, he had gone out and he'd located a lot of these members of the Batman Incorporated and fought against them, just to kind of basically gauge how capable they were. So they're not real happy to see him. And when Batman says, yeah, he's taken over Batman Incorporated, they're like, wait, what? Like, this is the guy that they have a beef with, So it makes for a little bit of humor here and there. Ghostmaker basically saying, yeah, because I'm the best. We know he's an arrogant character, but in a way, it's part of what makes him interesting. But he also says, yeah, I'm also the richest person that Batman knows. Batman's like, yeah, that's fair. He not only does he not have the time and the resources anymore, he doesn't have the monetary resources either to devote to Batman Incorporated to keep it going. And that's how Lex Luthor almost was able to take it over recently. So it's pretty interesting. That's about the first half of the story. In the second half, Ghostmaker chooses his team. He sends some down to what he calls the miners. He says, go back to your home city, your local place where you've been doing good, and keep doing good. And maybe, I'll call you up for a mission here or there, and we'll see what you got. And then there's going to be an international team that's a little bit more of the hands-on, taking on bigger threats. And the first threat they take on is in Chechnya, where apparently Lex Luthor established a branch of Batman Incorporated with a member of Batman Incorporated called the Grey Wolf. And when they go there, Kazbek is the name of the town, and things are not quite what they seem. It has to do with Lazarus resin and some people being mildly dosed, because this guy who's a medical doctor or a scientist in one of their prisons there, who needed more funding. And so he thought, I'm gonna infect the townspeople, and that will cause Lex Luthor to be interested to come here and to invest funding. And it worked. Like, his plan worked. Kind of an issue of the ends justifying the means. I don't agree with it. I'm kind of an ends justify the means guy, but man, you don't poison innocent people. Well, then obviously when Lex Luthor was defeated, everything went completely sideways, because Luthor wasn't there. The funding dried up. This guy wasn't able to cure anybody of what had happened. But when the Batman Incorporated team gets there, that's not what the scientist tells them. They say this Grey Wolf's the guy that's captured them all. He's keeping them in prison. He's the bad guy. But really, what the Grey Wolf is doing is he's got all these people imprisoned in the prison, these innocent people, because they're so violent because of the Lazarus resin that they'll attack anybody. And so he's got them all locked down for their own safety. But what's cool is, in the course of this mission, while they're finding this out, the Grey Wolf manages to defeat like 3 or 4 members of Batman Incorporated. And in the end, Ghostmaker's like, man, I hate to admit it, but these guys are pretty good. I fought against them, and maybe I played it off when I talked to Batman about how good they were and said they sucked, but they're pretty good. And you took out like 3 of them. So, we could really use your help. And so at the end of the day, the Grey Wolf joins the more legitimate version of Batman Incorporated here. And this is all spinning into a new series. Just got announced today that there's a new series written by the same writer that wrote this, Ed Brisson, a new Batman Incorporated series that's coming out later this year. So I'm excited for it. Not necessarily because I like the concept of Batman Incorporated. I could kind of take it or leave it, to be honest with you. It's a Grant Morrison thing. I'm not a big fan of the Grant Morrison run on Batman. But I'm a big fan of Ed Brisson. So I'm curious what it's going to be like with him doing it. Will we get some return of Batwing, some other characters that we've seen in the past? Not really excited about Clown Hunter or Phantom 2, as
Yeah.
Ghostmaker wants to change
Yeah.
his call sign to or whatever. He's just a character that can just go away as far as I'm concerned. I don't feel like nobody knows what to do with him. He's still not interesting at all. Even Ghostmaker at one point in this issue, like, fed up with him. Like, look, if you don't want the training, go. You're free to go, dude. Like, I didn't want to train you in the first place. I feel like, yeah, go away, Clown Hunter. I didn't want to read about you in the first place. So I kind of hope he does go away. But I'm very intrigued by this Grey Wolf character, and because we don't know much about him,
Yeah.
but he seems very formidable and also very noble, and I like that. I'm very intrigued by him. So I thought it was fantastic. I thought the John Timms art was pretty solid, and it felt like a big story. We've got 40 pages here in this annual, so it's pretty solid. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, and to pose another question, I mean, how do you publish another Batman book, but but not have it be a Batman book? Well, call it Batman Incorporated, and
Yeah.
Batman's not actually in it at all. It's Ghostmaker, and Ghostmaker, let's face it, is sort of like just more of a cockier, more mentally well-adjusted Batman than Batman, and or maybe the jury's even out on that, because if you're going to take on a character like Clown Hunter as your sidekick, maybe you've got issues of your own as well. But I I like this. I actually Ghostmaker has grown on me. I enjoy him as a character. I kind of like the fact that this is sort of a great way to get. I agree with you. I love the Gray Wolf. I think he's a very interesting character. Lots of potential here. I think he's got a cool design, an awesome mask. He's got a cool looking tattoo on his arms. I mean, he just looks very, very powerful. And Ghostmaker, of course, as you aptly pointed out, recognized that fact because he easily took out three other members of Batman Incorporated. I sort of like the premise here because on the one hand, I like more than one commentator on the Batman mythology is that I kind of miss just Batman by himself. This idea of a growing Batman family, part of me is kind of, I long for the days where there was just fewer members, and so now we got all the members of the Batman family. Now we got Batman Incorporated, but I kind of like the fact that Batman Incorporated is elsewhere. They're not in Gotham. Batman is sort of, he doesn't even control the money of it. It's Ghostmaker. Ghostmaker and him have similar sensibilities, but Ghostmaker's in charge, and Batman can he trusts Ghostmaker enough to do his own thing. And now Batman can do his own thing. So I like the idea that we're sort of getting the best of both worlds. And that's sort of like why, we had Batman sort of like with the outsiders. Batman is always around, but he's not. So the outsiders can shine. And hopefully, I'll be blunt, I want Batman Incorporated, even though Batman's not in it. I'm kind of glad he's not, because I want these characters to thrive in their own right. The irony is that you got to call it Batman Incorporated to get people to buy the damn comic, because that seems to be what the market suggests. But I enjoy this. You did a very good job summarizing the plot line. I don't need to go over it again. I enjoyed it. I love Ghostmaker. I love Grey Wolf. And I found myself surprised at how much I enjoyed this annual, because I often don't enjoy annuals, but this was a good story. And I credit that to Ghostmaker. There's something about his cocky attitude, the way Ed Brisson writes him. I find it even bearable. Even I hate Clown Hunter, and yet the rapport between Ghostmaker and Clown Hunter, I kind of like the way that Ghostmaker treats Clown Hunter like shit. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I like that, because I don't like Clown Hunter. I'd treat him like shit too. And yet, goddamn, if Clown Hunter, if that's a character that grows on me, that's going to be a tribute, I think, to the character of Ghostmaker, because Ghostmaker is a hold no bars teacher. He'll teach you, but you're gonna learn the hard way. And Clown Hunter's learning the hard way, because Ghostmaker does not go easy on him. And I got to tell you, this is Ghostmaker is turning into one of the most pleasant surprises of the year so far.
Yeah, I think that you're 100% right about Clown Hunter. He thinks he knows more than he knows, and he thinks he's more capable than he is. And Ghostmaker doesn't buy that, not for a second. He's like, "No, you suck. I'm not gonna pull any punches. I'm not gonna be not here. You suck, and I can make you better. And if you don't want to train, then go home. End of story. Yeah, that's exactly how I would treat him too. It's like, hey, dude, it's this way, or you're gonna get yourself killed. You want to get yourself killed, then be my guest. There's the door. Go get yourself killed. But I am also really excited to have Ed Brisson over at DC. Much like Matthew Rosenberg, you know, he made a name for himself on the independent scene and then did some work at Marvel. I don't, I, what you know, I don't know the politics of it. I don't know, you know, what's going on editorial wise or whatever. But if I'm Marvel, I don't let these two guys go. I don't know why they're not getting work at Marvel, but it's to DC's benefit that they are over at DC now doing work. So really excited for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Up next, Shadow War Omega, the final chapter here of this Shadow War, the war between Talia and Deathstroke, written by Joshua Williamson. We have art in this issue by Steven Segovia for the first 30 pages, and then Mike Henderson handles pages 31 through 35. Howard Porter does 36 through 40. Colors by Hi-Fi, letters by Troy Petrie. So we saw at the end of last issue that the imposter Deathstroke stood revealed as geo-force. And now we, in case you haven't been following along and seen just how crappy Markovia has had it lately, and how you could understand how geo-force could do what he's done, we get a little recap in the beginning that kind of explains that. So take it away, Rock.
Well, I gotta say, like, as much as we commented before when we reviewed the last chapter of Shadow War, that it was sort of spelled out that Geo-Force was the enemy. But I was surprised. I was surprised reading other reviews and listening to other people commentate on social media that a lot of people it did catch a lot of people by surprise. And I guess Geo-Force isn't that popular a character, maybe as well known as I maybe thought he was. After all, he wasn't a member of the last iteration of the Outsiders, and in any event, a lot of people sort of thought it was kind of a hokey and kind of a joke. And in any event, I kind of chuckle because in this opening pages here, it shows Brian Markov, talking to. He's talking to, I guess, the upper elites of Markovia at a time when they sold Markovia to Leviathan, because Leviathan literally purchased the country. If you can imagine buying a country, as absurd as that is, it's one of the things why the whole notion was kind of an absurd story plot point anyway. But literally, Leviathan at that time, under the control of Mark Shaw, bought Markovia, and it's revealed here that Brian Markov was just more of a. I get the sense that Markovia was more of that he's just a figurehead that was maybe more of a constitutional monarchy of some kind. And Brian Markov was just more of a figurehead. Unfortunately, before he could do anything to really prevent the takeover by Leviathan, it was taken over, and then Markovia was renamed Leviathan, and then it was destroyed as the entire world's heroes sort of converged upon Leviathan, former Markovia, and destroy, and basically all these people got killed. It's suggested that a lot of people died, and there's kind of an embarrassing scene where Geo-Force is going to go to the rescue, and Geo-Force will save Markovia, and all of a sudden he gets slammed by, ironically enough, a rock, which is ironic because Geo-Force, of course, controls geology and controls the earth, and he ends up getting slammed by the earth itself. So he utterly fails to save his home country, and this sort of reinforces what fits in really nicely. I mean, this is a history that it's very easy to understand why Brian Markov is an angry, pissed off guy and why he wants to kill Talia and Deathstroke. Deathstroke corrupted and had inappropriate relations with his younger sister, Tara Markov, who was Tara in the famous Judas, the Judas Contract Teen Titans storyline by George Perez, the late George Perez, and Marv Wolfman. And of course, now losing the entire country to Leviathan, which was controlled by Talia, and now Talia has regained control. It's really understandable to see why he is as pissed off as he is. Now, once we get that explanation at the beginning, really the bulk of this issue is just, I think the heart and soul of this issue is it switches to just a long, protracted discussion between Brian Markov, Batman, and Damian. And of course, Talia is there as well. And there's some really good character moments here. I think Joshua Williamson here, he does a really good job. In particular, I think with Damian here, under Joshua Williamson, Damian has become a character. I used to hate Damian. I love him. I loved him under Grant Moore. Grant Morrison basically created Damian. I always say Peter Tomasi made me love Damian Wayne, and then all of a sudden, Damian Wayne became a permanent jerk, and for the longest time, I didn't like Damian Wayne, and then I couldn't. Joshua Williamson comes along, and through the series, Robin series, and through Deathstroke, and through this Shadow War Omega, Damian has become more of a hero in his own right. And there's a very powerful point in this issue where Damian insists on being the one to confront Geo-force and stop him. And in a very significant moment, he has a moment where he confronts Geo-force, and he screams at him, and he tells him that heroes don't kill, and that is huge for this character of Damian Wayne, because how often, I mean, Damian was always a broken record. I mean, Damian was a guy that was keeping, he had a basement where he was keeping supervillains locked in without even Batman knowing. I mean, Damian is rumored to become Batman 666 in the future. There's rumor that Damian is the mini Hitler. There was a rumor in the 31st century under the Bendis storyline that potentially Damian could become the Hitler of the future. And then there's another one that says maybe John Kent. And so the question of Damian's future and his moral upbringing and his moral fortitude has always been something that has leaned toward a strong suggestion of darkness. This is a huge sign and a great jumping off point for Williamson, because his last issue of Robin is coming up. And so to leave the character of Damian Wayne with him saying essentially heroes don't kill, that's an about shift, and a significant one, and a welcome one in my mind for Damian, because we can finally get the young teenager with a little bit more of a sturdier head on his shoulders, and one that's so drowned in darkness. And I think it's welcome, and I love this issue because of that, and all the action surrounding it just really capped it off for me. So what do you think of it?
Yeah, I agree with you about Damian 100%. Although I never did like him. There was never that part where I liked him and then didn't like him. But I will admit that I did start to like. It did feel like he was maturing. In the hands of whoever was writing Batman. It was through various people, and then we talked about it when the Robin series started. It felt like Joshua Williamson had dematured him, had made him more immature again. But all credit to Williamson. By the end of the Lazarus Island death tournament or whatever it was called, Damian was even further along. Like, he brought him back, and we see him kind of, like you said, put the period on the end of the sentence here with Damian knocking out Geo-force and saying heroes don't kill, because there was a time that Damian never would have said that. That's not what he believed. That's not what he was brought up to believe, not what he was trained to believe or whatnot. So it's great to see that, and hopefully Joshua Williamson can continue to mature Damian. If anything, and I hate to bring this up, I really do, because it's been beaten to death and we're not going back again. It's clear. I said that as soon as he got his own title, Superman, Son of Kal-El. But one of the things that kind of bugs me about this is, look at the stories we're getting of Damian maturing, right, in these formative years. This is what we miss with John Kent.
Yeah.
This kind of stuff that we're never going to get with John Kent, because they skipped all of it, and it just sucks. Because even a character that I don't like, Damian, I'm seeing growth, and I'm seeing maturity, and I'm seeing interesting stories, and I'm growing to like him as a character and to respect him as a character. I already liked John Kent, so how much more would I have liked him? I like John Kent less now than I did when he was the 10 or 12-year-old or what have you. So again, for whatever reason they made that decision, they made it. We know the genie's not going back in the bottle, but man, this is the kind of thing that this is why people are upset, because they're not getting stories like this with John Kent. The other thing that I really enjoyed about this was just seeing Geo-force, because I have a little bit of mixed feelings. We talked about it a little bit last time. Geo-force has never been like a really compelling character, and like you mentioned when you first started talking about this issue, how people didn't even think of Geo-force as a possibility for being the fake Deathstroke, even though you and I had pretty much made up our minds on it. It made the most sense. But people kind of forget about him because he's not that memorable. He's sort of a generic character, not that interesting. This does make him more interesting, if not a little. Like I have mixed feelings. I think, man, if somebody did that to my country, the country where I was Prince, I would be like pissed off too. Isn't he justified in this? In wanting, millions of people have died. Millions
Yeah.
of his people have died. And so isn't he justified in killing Ra's al Ghul and wanting to kill Talia? It's never okay to kill. Like I get it. I can see both sides, but it does make him a more interesting character. I think seeing him use his powers in ways we never have before, like him creating the big golem, I thought was really cool. And then in the end, he ends up captured. Damien knocks him out or whatnot, and we see him in prison. I think at Bel Rev. So immediately you think, well, what's going to happen to him? We're going to be seeing him in the pages of whatever new version of Suicide Squad is going to be coming out, which I think is kind of interesting because in a lot of ways, Geo-force reminds me of Rick Flag, just like generic, square-jawed hero type guy, right? Without anything really that interesting. That's kind of Rick Flag to me. Never really been much in my mind that's compelling about Rick Flag. Same thing with Geo-force, but now he does have a little bit of an edge. A little bit interesting.
Yeah.
And then as far as Talia killing Slade Wilson, that was a pretty big shock in the issue. Yeah, killed him, whatever. But of course, he doesn't stay dead because the members of the secret society managed to grab his corpse and take it to a Lazarus pit, dump it in, and he comes walking out, still sans the eye, the one eye that will never heal. And he talks about having a contract to finish and how they're going to kill everybody and how that's going to tie in to Dark Crisis. You don't really think of Deathstroke as this cosmic, super powered character that's going to have, big ramifications on a big cosmic event like Dark Crisis. But Joshua Williamson has been writing Deathstroke Incorporated. He's writing Dark Crisis. He clearly has an affinity for Slade Wilson. And some of these other characters that Slade is in charge of on Secret Society of Supervillains are that power level where you do think they'll have something to do with it. And then there's also some hints that the demon, what's his name, Nesmu or
Nezha.
whatever,
The demon Nezha in
Nezha. Yeah, we know that he's got some more control over Lazarus pits and resurrection and whatnot than he has in the past. He's less restrained or what have you. So is this Slade Wilson that comes climbing out of the Lazarus pit, is he in any way influenced by Nezha or not? Like, we still don't know that. And then the other thing we got to mention is it's already been announced that there's a new Batman and Robin series coming. So not only did Damian say heroes don't kill and was the one that kind of dealt the final blow that knocked out Geo-force, he also reconciled with his father in a lot of ways because they've been estranged for a while, ever since Bruce found out what Damian was doing when he was leading the Teen Titans and he was imprisoning villains and whatnot. So, yeah, a lot of ramifications from this event. And you think about like a tight event. This was, I think 5-6 issues maybe? Whatever amount of issues. It was less issues than Trial of the Amazons.
Yeah.
Or War for Earth 3. But yet it mattered more. Like, we got much more consequences and many more seeds planted for stories going forward.
It was better character work as well. It was. I thought it was more exciting. I thought there was more revelations. I thought it was very well done. And I just want to add your comments about Geo-force. I personally think that if there's any survivors of the country of Markovia, I believe the people of Markovia would demand the release of Geo-force. I believe he will be released. I believe that his diplomatic status will be reinstated. I believe he'll go back to Markovia. And frankly, I can't think of a better character that could become the de facto, I don't want to call it the de facto Doctor Doom of the DC universe, but maybe I'll call him that anyway. But I think that he is an infinitely more interesting character now than he ever was as Geo-force. Now, maybe even a name change is appropriate for for geo-force, because he might. I don't see him being in Belle Reve prison for long. I don't want to see this character becoming a member of the Suicide Squad. He deserves better than that. He deserves, because what I refuse to believe that Markovia is completely destroyed, or it's Leviathan, but I think Markovia is going to be reinstated to its former glory. I think the future looks really bright for Geo-Force, for Brian Markov, and I think the storytelling potential for the character is just huge, and I really hope that DC builds on it.
Yeah, I do too. I don't really want to see him in Suicide Squad either, but it wouldn't surprise me to see it. I don't know that he'd rise to the level of Doctor Doom because he's not that egotistical. I see him more as like a Black Adam type,
Yeah,
um, which again, still that's still more compelling than he was before. But still, there's a part of me, that part that loves Batman and the Outsiders back in the day. Just again, being 12, 13 years old or whatever it was when I was reading it, and that Jim Aparo art, just with the curlyish hair, and firing the thrusters out of his hands or whatever. Yeah. There's always going to be a part of, even though he wasn't that interesting, he was fun. There was an innocence to him that's been removed. So yeah, a lot more storytelling potential for sure.
yeah.
Okay. Up next, we have Nice House on the Lake, issue number 9 from writer James Tynion the fourth, Alvaro Martinez Bueno on art, Jordan Belair on colors, and World Design does letters. This is an interesting issue. We get a lot more insight into Walter himself, I feel like, in terms of what he's doing. We know that he wiped everybody's memories when they just wouldn't go along with what he wanted them to do. And he switched a couple of the people that were, uh, one person was imprisoned and off on their own in the one little house, Reginald. And when the rest of them discovered him, that's when Walter decided to wipe everybody's memories. And this time he didn't let them know that the world outside of where they're living has been destroyed, supposedly. And this time he's got Nora isolated because he seems to need somebody who kind of knows what's going on that he can use as kind of a sounding board. But I love that Nora stands up to Walter. She's like, look, clearly you want some justification for what you're doing. You say that if we all knew the truth, that we would side with you, we'd make the same decisions as you. You're offering us a way to stay alive when the rest of the human race is wiped out. But you've got to trust me. You've got to let me in. You've got to let me know what's going on. And I love the way that Tynan puts it. She says, look, I'm not going to pull the lever that kills everybody, right? Like you're worried that if I know too much that I'm not going to agree with you and then the human race gets wiped out. But if you want me to really understand the situation you're in and why you're making the judgments you're making, you've got to let me see everything. You've got to let me see the lever. And you even got to give me the ability to pull that lever. You've got to give me the ability to wipe out everybody. Like if you really want to trust me, that's what you have to do. If you really want justification that you're doing the right thing. So I love that idea of this lever that can be pulled. That, it's a metaphorical lever, obviously. But I love that idea. And Walter actually gives in, and that's the cliffhanger we get at the end of the issue. He's like, I can't tell you everything, but I'm going to show you something. He's like, yeah, I can't give you everything, but I can give you something. And he takes her to this place, and it's like completely pitch black, and she's like, there's nothing here. And he says, this is backstage. This is where I live. And Walter's like, well, there's stuff here. It's just that your eyes and your mind can't comprehend it. But he's about to show her something special. And we know we only have 3 issues to go. So there's still so many questions about exactly what's going on here. We know it was hinted at previously a few issues ago that maybe the rest of the world isn't beyond saving. Maybe it's possible that the world can be saved, that it hasn't all been destroyed. So yeah, there's a lot going on, and I'm really, really enjoying the series. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And just to add to your summary of the narrative, there's at least there's about 5 or 6 pages. A couple of them are at least one of which is double page spread, where Nora, who has actually been isolated by Walter to actually give him some guidance or give him some advice, uh, Walter is letting Nora more into his world, but Nora has tipped off somebody else through the looking glass, so to speak, and there's another member of the household who, at the end, when Nora goes into that secret room with Walter, ends up in the final panels sneaking into the room as well. So Nora has managed to get one up on Walter. The tables are turning, and what makes this such an interesting issue is that Walter has always been strictly very much in control of everyone in the household. As soon as they become knowledgeable of what's going on, he erases their memory. But Walter can only erase their memory if he knows everything that they know, but Nora has managed to convey some of the secrets to a member of the household who Walter is not aware of, and this other member of the household is sneaking into that secret room with them, and Walter's not aware of it. So this creates an interesting dynamic that in the event that Walter mind wipes everyone's memory, he might not be mind wiping all of them, and so he's slipping. Walter is slipping. Walter is experiencing a lot of stress. He's an alien that wants to save all these 10 people on this island that he befriended on Earth over the course of 30 or so years, and it's falling apart. And is there a way to save the Earth? Is it really destroyed? What's really going on here? Tinian has hinted at it through the narrative, and it's very well done. And and the art is just fantastic. This is every now and then, of course, I read a comic book story that I want to see on Amazon Prime or Netflix or HBO Max, and this is a prime example. I would love this. Just cries out. Can you imagine? In my mind, I'm trying to cast all the main characters of this narrative. I mean, I think of an all-star cast. This would make an awesome movie that you could conceivably do in a 2.5-hour movie. I think this. I can't wait to see how this ends. This is the first comic. It doesn't matter. This was the first comic that I read when it popped up on the previews. This is clearly one of my favorites. I read this even before the Action Comics one. I'm loving Action Comics, but this is the first on my reads, my read list when I get it. But I love this. I'm loving what Tinian's doing with this.
Yeah, agreed. It's fantastic. So highest recommendation. Okay, last of the regular issues we're going to talk about. It's speaking of annuals, Action Comics 2022 annual number 1, A Tale of Two Titans. We get a story, a childhood story of Clark Kent, and we also get they call it an origin of Mongol. I guess it's a partial origin in a lot of ways, but it's written by Philip Kennedy Johnson and Cy Spurrier. We have art by Dale Eaglesham and Ian Churchill. Colors are by Lee Luffridge, lettered by Dave Sharp. So give us a recap of this one, Rock.
Well, I'm really curious to know what you think of this because I know that I'm more of a fan than what PKJ Philip Kennedy Johnson has been doing with the main Superman storyline. I thought this to me felt like an amazing longer version of a story that we would normally see in a Superman Red and Blue anthology, because it feels, I thought this really tugged at the heartstrings in a very sort of familiar formula that we've seen before by many other writers. Philip Kennedy Johnson here is essentially he's juxtaposing the early childhood development of Clark Kent with the early childhood of Mongol. And of course they couldn't be more different. But what Philip Kennedy Johnson manages to do here is that he frankly somehow managed to surprise me, because it was more complicated than just, Clark Kent has really good parents and Mongol has a very bad mother, and vice versa. This was grounded in story. I was this is called A Tale of Two Titans, and Titans they are. Superman's upbringing and Mongol's upbringing. And I had almost as much sympathy for Mongol as I did for Superman here, in terms of what, I had no idea, for example, that I did not know, actually, I think it was mentioned before, but I didn't realize that that Clark Kent's mother, Martha, had cancer when she was younger. If that was, maybe that was revealed in an earlier storyline and I just missed it, but that was, it's Clark Kent's early years, he's dealing with a young bully named Caleb, and Caleb has an abusive father. So Caleb takes out his aggressions on other children, and he's a new kid in class. And at one point, he takes out his aggression on a young Clark Kent, and his mother Martha obviously, tells Clark to, turn the other cheek and all that other jazz. And it ends up at Caleb at one point ends up pushing Clark, and then his Martha gets pushed over, and her wig falls off, and all of a sudden it was like it really hit me. It hit me. Oh my God, she's undergoing chemotherapy, and it was really quite the moment, and it seemed to shock Clark. Clark was not aware that his mother was undergoing cancer treatment, and just a really touching moment at the end of the Clark Kent story, where at the end, Clark encourages Caleb, telling Caleb, the bully, when they have a confrontation later on, you don't have to be like your father. You don't have to be like him. And there's a very touching moment where at one point, as a way to try to get closer to his mom and make his mom feel better, there's a image of young Clark Kent trying to cut his hair off so he could be bald like his mom to make his mom feel better. And he can't cut his hair off because it's invulnerable, and he can't. And he's so frustrated. And it's really touching. And then that moment is reinforced at the end, because unbeknownst to Clark's kindness to Caleb ends up at the hospital apologizing to Martha. And as a sign of solidarity to Martha, Caleb voluntarily shaved his own head. And it's something that Clark himself couldn't do. But that moment was so touching for Martha. And it reinforced Martha's message to Clark and to the reader that, you don't know the impact that a simple act of kindness can pay dividends down the line in ways that you can't foresee. And that was just the Clark Kent story. Then you have the other story with Mongol, and the difference that, Mongol's mother was basically, obviously she slept with the Mongol who got pregnant, and then she was discarded and pushed off into the lands to roam, and of course she wants to raise her son, and she raises her son to never protect. A Mongol does not protect. But young Mongol's instinct is to protect his mother. Mongol was born with the instinct to protect his mother, to help, to protect. And it was exactly that instinct that was driven out of him by his mother. You don't protect me. And the mother betrayed that code by giving her life to protect Mongol at the end. And Mongol will grow up always saying that his mother betrayed the code because she protected me, and then he grows up to take revenge upon his father and become the Mongol who is by killing the Mongol who was. And it's just the egregious difference between those two stories. It just reinforces how the difference that a mother could make. And there's not a lot of focus on father here. It's basically two mothers. This is a story of a relationship of two sons with their mother. And I thought this was excellent. Absolutely excellent. This was, as much as I like Nice House on the Lake, which was my first comic that I read, Action Comics Annual here, this came to the top of this was my favorite comic of the week by far. So I'm really curious to hear what you have to think, because I know that you haven't been necessarily a big fan of the PKJ Warworld storyline. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it felt a little heavy-handed, right? It felt like I get it, right? Superman's inspirational. He's my favorite character and what have you. And I appreciated that a lot of why Superman is who he is because of, Ma and Pa Kent. That's what I've always felt, which part of the reason I hate the Man of Steel movie. So PKJ does a great job of illustrating that here, right? But it also, man, it feels like I'm being beaten over the head with it at times. But I did for the most part enjoy this, and I thought the art was fantastic. As far as Martha Kent having cancer, I think it's been mentioned before. Like I vaguely recall. I don't know that it's ever been a part of the story as much as Philip Kennedy Johnson brings it in here, which I thought was interesting. As far as Mongol goes, yeah, that's why I said it's sort of an origin. I mean, we kind of got part of maybe the second half of Mongol's origin in an issue of Action Comics recently, and now this is kind of like let's see how we got to that point, right? Because that was sort of him being a teenager and killing his father and taking over and what have you. And this is kind of earlier on, formative years, and yeah, you're right. It's a complete 180-degree difference in the way mothers have raised their sons, and it has to obviously with culture and species and what have you. She's a Warzone, and mother's job is not to protect. A Warzone's job is not to protect. Like, it's completely the opposite um, of the way that Ma Kent is raising John, or Clark rather. But it's like Philip Kennedy Johnson. He's telling these stories in parallel to show us that Superman and Mongol are on opposite ends of the spectrum, right? They're kind of in a lot of ways two sides of the same coin. I don't buy that. That to me, like, I don't know if it's because Mongol came out so much later, decades and decades and decades later. I don't see Mongol as like the anti-Superman in terms of all his values are the exact opposite. Whatever. Is Mongol an interesting villain? Is he a formidable villain for Superman? Yes, he is that. I think back to one of the greatest Superman stories, classic Superman annuals, actually. Speaking of Superman annuals of all time, and it's number 11, written by Alan Moore. What do you get for the man who has everything? And it's the Black Mercy Rose, and Superman gets caught up in this dreamlike world and ultimately rejects it. That's Mongol, right? Machinations and plotting and whatever. But what's not working for me, as much as this was an interesting story, but what's not working for me is just this idea that PKJ is trying to set up Mongol as like the Superman villain, and I don't buy it. I don't know. That part's not working for me. And as far as the War World story, I just feel like it's gone on a little bit too long. I'm ready for it to be over. At times it's been compelling, at times not so much. It feels like it's been dragging, but ultimately this is a very well constructed story, especially with the parallel storytelling and compare and contrast or whatever. But yeah, I think fundamentally for me though, it's just it feels like he's trying to say that they're so alike in so many ways, and then they're complete opposite in other ways, and so they are that two sides of the same coin. And that's the part that it falls apart for me, because Mongol's never been that before, and it feels like in a lot of ways PKJ is trying to retcon Mongol into being that, and I just don't see Mongol that way. So, but it is a very, very well constructed story, in both instances, both telling the story and the emotion of the relationship between Mongol and his mother, and obviously Clark Kent and his mom. There's some poignant moments that are fantastic. You mentioned Caleb shaving his head, and Clark unable to do it. Yeah, really, really great job. So as far as does it rise all the way up to the top as my favorite, I think I got to give my nod to Nice House on the Lake, actually, for a lot of the reasons that you said. But it's close. I mean, you can't go wrong with either one. I think you should be reading both, right? You should be reading Action Comics and you should be reading Nice House on the Lake. So
Yeah.
Anyway, few other books that are out this week in terms of some collections. We've got Batman Reptilian, which is written by Garth Ennis with fantastic art by Liam Sharp. That has its collected hardcover edition that's out this week. There is a Death and Return of Superman Omnibus for $150. It has it all, man, from the time that Doomsday first appeared all the way, all those issues as he marches toward Metropolis, to the death of Superman, and then all the 4 replacement Superman, eventually leading to the return of the Superman that we know. So many, many, many pages for that one. If you're curious, if you've never read it, that's a great way to get it. I mean, yes, it is $150, but it's 1,408 pages. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of book for your dollar.
Yeah, the only downside is that when I got a couple of those, I don't like the middle, because there's so many pages that when you sometimes you miss the full appreciation of the art in the double page spreads, because you can't always see the because when you
Yeah.
open it in the middle of it, you kind of miss some of the pages because there's just too many pages all in one. But
Yeah.
it's cool to
I
own,
get
though. It
you.
is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like you've got to, it's not something that you can like just read. Like you got to be sitting down with the
Yeah,
thing in your lap because it weighs like 50 pounds.
exactly.
You
Kill
can't just,
yourself.
oh, I'm going to sit here and hold it with one hand like a paperback while I drink my coffee. No, that's
You
not the
mean
way.
whiskey, actually?
Yeah. Whiskey or what have you. Yeah, 100%. But still super cool to have.
Yeah.
We also have a couple of, well, actually, there's another omnibus, the Teen Titans by Jeff Johns, which is a beloved and critically acclaimed run. That has a hardcover omnibus as well that's coming out. That one is also 1,400 pages, 1,440 pages to be exact. So art by Mike McCone and Tony S. Daniel, Tom Grummett. There's fantastic art throughout that run. It's a really great run. And then the last two collections, there's a hardcover and a trade paperback, and it's volume 1 of Superman, Son of Kal-El, from artist John Timms, written by Tom Taylor. So you can choose your poison there. You can get the hardcover, you can get the soft cover, whatever works for you. That one's only 152 pages. Again, it's just the usual trade collecting 6 issues. So those are the other books that are out from DC this week. The other collections. As well as, I think I mentioned it at the top, there is also a Batman Beyond the White Knight reprint that collects the first 2. They're calling it a showcase edition. It's just like a regular monthly comic. It's not hardcover or anything, but it does collect the first 2 issues. So it's 60 pages because it's got a couple of pinups and some of the variant covers and whatnot, a little bit of back matter. But it's the 2 regular 20-page issues, brings you up to 40, and then there's some other back matter and art in it. So I am enjoying that that story, maybe more so than any previous Sean Gordon Murphy verse Batman story. I think it's the best one yet. So if you're curious and want to get caught up, because I think the first 2 issues sold out, if I'm not mistaken. So you can get them both there in one book. So. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Anything you got coming out this week, Rocky, that you want to tease the folks with?
No, I wish I've just been increasingly busy at work, and we just got a new roof, and we're doing yard work, and I got a trials this week. So yeah, it's a miracle I find time to do this with you this week, but I'm glad I did. It's always fun to review comics with you, Jace.
Yeah, appreciate that. I likewise am super busy, done traveling, I hope. So just getting caught up on everything that kind of was left to the wayside at the office while I was gone. And then hopefully once I get caught up with that, we'll be bringing back Spawn Daily, and hopefully we'll get some interviews in the pipeline. Like, this is the first time since I can remember I don't have any interviews lined up. Like, when I look at my calendar, there's nothing there. It feels very strange. But I've been traveling for 6 weeks, and I didn't want to schedule any because I just didn't know. And plus, being on the road makes it a lot harder. So we'll have some other content coming up for you soon, though. I did attend the Phoenix Fan Fusion, as it's now called, formerly Phoenix Comic Con, and then Phoenix Fan Fest. That's last weekend. Didn't know what to expect. It had been 3 years. I think even the city of Phoenix didn't know what to expect. I don't think they expected much, because for the first time ever, they had the Diamondbacks, the Major League Baseball team. They had them scheduled for home games at the same time as the convention. They never do that. They've never done that. Like, in the 10 years the convention has been downtown at the convention center, they always have the Diamondbacks on the road because there won't be any parking. There won't be enough parking. You can't have, thousands of attendees to the baseball game and thousands of attendees to the comic convention at the same time. There won't be enough parking.
Yeah.
Well, they did it this weekend, and guess what?
There wasn't enough parking.
The convention exploded. Like, it was so busy. Every retailer, every artist I talked to, they were over the moon with how many people were there. The people I talked to were super excited to be back. Some of them had been holding on to their badges, or tickets or whatever for 2 years,
That's
waiting
wonderful.
for it to come back. But yeah, the bad part was there was no parking. Some people, I heard horror stories of people waiting in a line in their car for like 2 hours just to get into the parking garage. So I didn't have an issue, but I kind of know downtown pretty well and the secret spots or what have you. But it's exactly what the convention needed, because I think I've heard rumors that he's been trying to sell, and then the debacle with the crazy fan or whatever he was that wanted to harm Jason David Frank, and attendance went down because he had to raise prices and there's metal detectors and whatever. Right. And for the past 2 times he held it, 2019 and 2018. For the first time in the history of the con, attendance went down. Well, it went way up this year. So hopefully, if he does want to sell it, that shows Reed Pop or Fan Expo, whoever is interested in buying it, that yes, this is a feasible show. It can be successful, and they can bring somebody in who, not that it's not a fun show or they don't know how to run it or anything, but when you get a company whose sole job is to run these conventions and run them very successfully and have relationships with artists and celebrity guests and what have you, I think that's only to the benefit, and it can only increase next year. Because the one thing about this Phoenix Comic-Con this year, Phoenix Fan Fusion, the guest list was a little sparse. Because again, I think they just didn't know what to expect, so they weren't going to splurge for a bunch of guests and then have hardly anybody there to pay for them. So anyway, I'll be doing a roundup of that coming up later this week, as well as our usual New Comics Wednesday episode. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody.
I have to quickly say that it's good to hear that the MegaCon was so good. It's coming out of the pandemic. I think things are picking up. Go see Top Gun Maverick. I saw it last night. I love it. Fantastic movie. I'm glad Tom Cruise and Paramount decided to wait 2 years to release it through the pandemic. It was the right move. I love it. I'm a 50-something guy, and I absolutely loved it. I've cosplayed as Top Gun before, gone to Top Gun parties, and as somebody that was a major point of my formative years. Feeling the need for speed, that love and feeling, and all that. Talk to me, Goose, all that jazz. Great movie. I encourage everybody to go out and see it. And congratulations to Tom Cruise. I just had to say that.
Yeah, his biggest opening ever. That was fantastic. I watched it as well. My wife and I went on Saturday night. We both really enjoyed it.
55% of the audience that went were over the age of 40. So they're hoping, because it's a big sign, because most of the 40-year-olds plus they feared were staying away from theaters and just streaming now. And so they consider it maybe a sign, maybe the movie has saved the movie-going experience for the 40-plus crowd. So and interestingly enough, 35% of the movie-going crowd are under the age of 35, and it was 36 years ago so they weren't even born when the first Top Gun came out. So that's so wonderful that they're going to see a sequel that most people weren't even born when the original came out. That's quite a feat, I think. Quite a feat.
Yeah, it is. It shows the power of Tom Cruise for sure.
Yeah.
Say what you want about him personally. The guy, he knows how to make a fantastic movie. So, anyway, everybody, don't forget to head over to YouTube if you don't already subscribe. Look for Rocky's channel. It's Comic Space Boom ! Like this video, ring the notification bell so you know when new content comes out, and be sure to subscribe. Conversely, if you check us out on YouTube all the time, be sure you also subscribe to The Comic Source on your favorite podcasting app or platform. That way you don't miss out on any of the audio-only content that comes out. So, once again, great week of DC Comics. Rocky's favorite was Action Comics Annual. I'm giving my nod to Nice House on the Lake. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.